The heat came first, wet, insistent, soaking through her scrubs in the sterile silence of Manhattan's most fortified hospital wing. Tiana's arms crossed her chest, but the milk didn't care about her shame, her training, or the fact that the man dying 6 feet away had ordered executions over breakfast. Kenji didn't lower his silenced pistol, didn't blink, just blocked the only exit and spoke in that razor-sharp English that made every word sound like a contract. "The medicine the doctors need is in your body, Nurse Carter. You feed him. We forgive your brother's debt. You refuse—" He tilted his head toward the phone in his other hand, where a photo of her brother's bruised face filled the screen. "We deliver him in pieces. To 1 per hour." The poison eating through Kang Junho's system wasn't something you could flush with dialysis or neutralize with activated charcoal. The toxicologists had tried everything, but this was engineered specifically to bind to neural pathways, mimicking infant respiratory failure at the cellular level. The only bridge between the synthetic death in his veins and survival was a protein compound found in human breast milk. Not just any milk, hers. A rare genetic marker inherited from her grandmother's West African lineage, activated only in women who'd recently nursed, whose bodies carried antibodies the poison couldn't resist. Tiana looked at Junho, unconscious, ink-black tattoos snaking up his neck like smoke from a dragon's mouth, and felt the weight of an impossible math problem. Her ethics degree versus her brother's life. Her daughter's future versus this man's violent empire. Welcome to the story of how a pediatric nurse became the only living antidote to New York's most dangerous man. Drop a like if you believe some debts are paid in blood and milk, and subscribe because what happens next will rewrite everything you think you know about monsters and healers. Tiana had been working the overnight shift at Mercy General for exactly 6 months when the text arrived. 2:47 a.m. Her hands went numb before she finished reading the first line. $50,000 by Friday, or your sister becomes the example. She'd known her brother Marcus had a gambling problem. She hadn't known he'd borrowed from people who collected debts with pliers and gasoline. Her daughter Zoe was 14 months old, asleep at her mother's apartment in Queens. Tiana's body still produced milk even though she'd started weaning 3 weeks ago. Her OB said some women just held on to it longer, that her body was stubborn about letting go. She'd cursed it every time she had to pump in the staff bathroom, wasting liquid gold down the drain because Zoe was transitioning to formula. Now, staring at the unconscious crime lord whose second-in-command had just turned her biology into a hostage negotiation, Tiana understood that nothing in her body had ever been wasted. It had all been preparation for this. "How do you even know this will work?" Her voice sounded steadier than the earthquake in her chest. Kenji's expression didn't change. "Dr. Park tested your records against the toxin profile. O-negative blood, recent lactation. The specific antibody sequence." He said something in Korean she didn't understand, then switched back. "Your milk carries what his body needs to fight. Medicine can't reach the poison fast enough, but this—" He gestured at her with the gun. "This absorbs different, faster, like feeding a newborn." "That's insane. You have better idea? Tell me now." That first night lasted a lifetime. Tiana fed him, waited in the sterile silence while machines beeped their mechanical prayers, then fed him again. Her body responded with the efficiency that shamed her, the letdown reflex triggered by his proximity, by the warmth of his breath against her skin, by the primal recognition that something living needed what she carried. By dawn, his color had shifted from gray to something almost human. The monitors stopped their frantic warnings. When his breathing evened into a rhythm that suggested his body remembered how to fight. Dr. Park arrived at 6, checked vitals with hands that trembled slightly, and met Tiana's exhausted gaze with something between gratitude and fear. "Whatever you're doing, don't stop. His nervous system is responding, the toxin levels are dropping." Kenji brought her coffee. Black, no sugar, like he'd known without asking. He set it on the table beside her and spoke in that flat tone that somehow made everything sound like a threat. "Boss's enemies will know by tonight that he's alive. When they figure out why, they'll come for you." Tiana's hands wrapped around the cup, seeking warmth she couldn't find. You said the debt would be cleared. You said I could walk away. The debt is cleared. Walking away is different. He checked his phone. It typed something in rapid Korean. You saved the dragon's life. In our world, that makes you valuable, also makes you a target. I'm a nurse. I'm nobody. You were nobody. His dark eyes pinned her. Now you're the woman who did what 10 doctors couldn't. That's a story people will want to silence. The weight of it settled over her like a burial shroud. She'd thought saving Junho would end this. Instead, it had just rewritten the terms. On the second day, Tiana brought her textbook, Advanced Pediatric Care, and tried to study between feedings. The words blurred. Her mind kept circling back to the man in the bed, to the way his body had learned to recognize hers, to the intimate horror of what they were doing and how quickly it had started to feel routine. She traced the curve of his jaw with her eyes, noting the precise angle of his cheekbones, the way his hair fell across his forehead in black silk. He looked younger, unconscious, less like the man who'd built an empire on fear and more like someone who might have chosen different if the world had offered different options. Do you always stare at your patients? Tiana jerked upright, textbook sliding from her lap. Junho's eyes were open, dark, sharp, tracking her with the focused intensity of a predator assessing threat. Her heart kicked against her ribs. You're awake. Apparently. His voice was rough from disuse, accent thick, turning the syllables into something exotic and dangerous. How long? 3 days. He tried to sit up, failed. The monitors screamed. Kenji materialized from the hallway, already speaking rapid Korean. Junho listened, his gaze never leaving Tiana's face. She watched understanding move through his expression, confusion shifting to realization hardening into something she couldn't name. When Kenji finished, Junho spoke in careful English. You saved my life. It wasn't a question. Tiana didn't know how to respond, so she said nothing. They told you about your brother's debt? Yes. And you agreed to... He gestured vaguely at the space between them, acknowledging the intimate thing they'd been doing while he was unconscious. I didn't have a choice. There's always choice. He struggled upright again, managing it this time despite the pain that tightened his jaw. What did Kenji promise you? That he'd clear the 50,000, that my family would be safe. How much is your family's safety worth to you? The question landed like a fist. Tiana lifted her chin, meeting his stare. Everything. But I'm not asking for more than we agreed. Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. The deal was made without my permission, while I was dying. Ice water filled her veins. Are you saying you won't honor it? Junho reached for the call button. Kenji reappeared, and the conversation that followed was entirely Korean, clipped, tense, punctuated by Kenji's obvious objections and Junho's flat refusals. Tiana understood nothing except the way Kenji's expression shifted from defensive to surprised to something almost approving. When Kenji left, Junho turned back to her. Your brother's debt is cleared. I've also transferred $100,000 to an account in your name. Tiana's breath stopped. I didn't ask. You saved my life. In my world, that debt is infinite. He paused, studying her with those obsidian eyes that seemed to see through skin to the fear underneath. But there's one condition. Of course there was. Nothing came free, especially not from men who wore violence like expensive suits. What condition? You continue treatment until I'm fully recovered. The poison is still in my system. The doctors say another week, maybe 2. The way he said it, low, certain, made something flutter in her stomach. I need you. She should have said no, should have taken the money and disappeared. But looking at him, at the intensity burning in his dark eyes, at the way he tried to appear strong despite obvious pain, she found herself nodding. 2 weeks, then I'm done. Junho smiled. It was devastating. then you're done. By the end of the first week, Tiana had learned that Kang Junho was 32, educated at Oxford, and fluent in 5 languages. She learned this from the parade of visitors who treated her with careful respect once they understood her role. Men in expensive suits who bowed slightly when they entered, who spoke in rapid Korean, who looked at Junho with equal parts fear and devotion. She learned he didn't drink alcohol but consumed black coffee like it was medicine. That he read constantly, philosophy, poetry, histories of wars she'd never heard of. That his organization controlled half of Manhattan's underground economy, from the docks to the Diamond District. She learned these things by watching, by listening to conversations she wasn't meant to understand, by piecing together a portrait of a man who'd inherited violence at 16 and built it into something that made politicians nervous. What she didn't learn was why he watched her the way he did. Like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Like her presence in his room was the most interesting thing that had happened to him in years. "You have a child." Not a question. He said it on the 5th day while she was reading during the interval between feedings. Tiana looked up from her book. "Yes. How old?" 14 months. "And the father?" Her jaw tightened. "Not in the picture." Junho set aside the Nietzsche he'd been reading. "He left?" "I left, before she was born." Tiana met his gaze steadily, daring him to judge. "He thought love meant ownership. I disagreed." Something shifted in his expression. "Good. Good. That you left." "Some women don't," he paused. "My mother didn't. My father, he believed in control, in breaking things that resisted. She endured it until the day he was murdered. Then she smiled at his funeral." The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Tiana didn't know what to say, so she said the only true thing she could think of. "I'm sorry. Don't be. His death gave me freedom, gave me the organization, gave me the chance to rebuild it into something different." Junho's smile was sharp, less breaking, more strategic alignment. "Is that what you call it? What would you call it?" "I don't know enough about your world to call it anything." "Good." He leaned back against the pillows, wincing slightly. "Keep it that way. My world ruins things. Makes them ugly." But the way he looked at her suggested he didn't think she could be made ugly, that maybe she was already too far inside his world to escape unscathed. The intimacy crept up on both of them. At first, feedings were medical, necessary, nothing more. But as Junho recovered, as he became more aware and alert, the dynamic shifted. He watched her now with an intensity that made her skin warm, tracked her movements, noticed everything. "Why do you bite your lip when you're thinking?" he asked one evening. Tiana touched her mouth unconsciously. "I don't." "You do, right side, when you're reading something confusing or making a decision you don't want to make." Heat crawled up her neck. "You're observant." "I'm alive because I notice details." His gaze dropped to her lips, lingered, rose back to her eyes. "You're a detail worth noticing." Don't what? Don't pretend this is something it's not." Tiana stood, needing distance, needing air that didn't taste like the dangerous heat building between them. "You're paying me. We have a transaction. That's all?" Junho's expression hardened. "Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it?" He was quiet for a long moment, then so softly she almost missed it. "If that's what you need to believe." The tension stretched thin as wire. Tiana gathered her things, hands shaking slightly, desperate to leave before she said something stupid or true or both. "Tiana." She stopped at the door. "Thank you. For today. For every day." She didn't trust herself to respond, just nodded and left. Outside, pressed against the hallway wall, she tried to catch her breath and failed. This was a mistake. All of it. She was getting too close, feeling too much, letting him see parts of her that should stay hidden. But when 2 hours passed and her body reminded her it was time to go back, she didn't hesitate. That night she dreamed of dragons and dark eyes, and the way Junho said her name like it was the only word in his vocabulary that mattered. On the 10th day, everything changed. Tiana arrived for the evening feeding to find Junho's room crowded with men whose suits probably cost more than her car. The conversation stopped the moment she entered. Every eye turned toward her with the same calculating assessment. Junho stood by the window, fully dressed for the first time since she'd met him. Black suit, black shirt, hair styled back from his face. He looked dangerous, powerful. Oh, like the man who'd built an empire from blood and steel. He spoke in Korean, then switched to English mid-sentence. "This is Tiana Carter. She saved my life. You will treat her with the same respect you show me. Understood?" A chorus of affirmatives. Then the room cleared like smoke, leaving them alone. "What was that?" Tiana asked. "Reminders." Junho crossed to her, moving with predatory grace. "That you're under my protection now. I don't need—" "Yes, you do." He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive. "Someone tried to kill me. They used poison because they couldn't get close enough for a bullet. They'll try again. And now that people know you're the reason I'm alive, they'll come for you to finish what they started." Fear crawled up her spine. "No one knows about me. I'm nobody. Everyone knows. In my world, nothing stays secret." His voice was gentle, but his eyes were granite. "The woman who saved Kang Junho is a story people want to hear. My enemies will want to make sure there's no one around to save me next time. This wasn't part of the deal. The deal changed the moment you touched me." He moved closer. "I owe you my life, Tiana. That means I protect yours whether you want me to or not. I have a daughter, a family. I can't be part of your world. You already are." The words fell like stones. "The only question is whether you'll let me keep you safe or whether you'll walk out that door and hope my enemies don't find you first." She wanted to scream, wanted to run. Instead, she stood frozen while Junho made a single phone call in Korean. When he hung up, his expression was unreadable. "I'm moving you into my compound, you, your daughter, your mother. I have a house large enough for all of you. Security, privacy, everything you need. You're insane. Practical." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. "These men were parked outside your mother's apartment this morning. They're not mine." The image showed a black sedan, 2 figures in the front seat, professional, watching. Tiana's knees went weak. "Oh God. Let me fix this." Junho's voice dropped lower. "Let me protect what I endangered. By trapping me? By keeping you alive." He waited. "You can say no. I'll respect that, but I'll also make sure you understand what you're choosing between." She thought of Zoe, of her mother, of the $50,000 that had become $100,000, of the life she'd built from nothing and how fragile it suddenly seemed. "1 month," she said finally. "Trial basis. Then I leave and you back off." "Agreed. And you keep your distance. This isn't— We're not— I understand." But the way he looked at her suggested he didn't agree at all. 3 days later, Tiana moved into Junho's compound with a suitcase, a diaper bag, and the sinking feeling that she'd just made either the best or worst decision of her life. The compound wasn't a house. It was a statement. 15 acres of manicured gardens surrounded by walls that looked decorative but were reinforced with enough steel to stop a tank. The main house was all glass and clean lines, modern architecture that somehow felt warm despite the cold precision of its design. Junho gave her the entire east wing. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchenette. Her mother had a suite on the first floor with a view of the gardens. Zoe's nursery looked like something from a magazine, soft colors, expensive toys, a crib carved from wood that probably cost more than Tiana's annual salary. "This is too much," she said, watching her daughter explore the space with wide-eyed wonder. "It's necessary." Junho crouched to Zoe's level, letting the baby grab his finger with her tiny hand. His voice dropped into something soft, something Tiana had never heard from him. "Hello, little one." Zoe studied him with serious brown eyes, her mother's eyes, then smiled. Junho smiled back, and Tiana's heart did something complicated and terrifying. "She likes you," Tiana said quietly. Children see clearly. They know who's safe. He stood, still holding Zoe's hand. I won't let anything happen to her. Or you. That's a promise. Tiana wanted to believe him. The wanting was dangerous. The first week was adjustment, learning the rhythms of the house, the staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts, the armed men who treated her with careful respect. She learned that Junho left early and returned late, that he worked from an office in the West Wing, that he kept his world separate from hers except at dinner. He'd asked the first night if she'd join him. You don't have to, but I'd like the company. She should have said no, should have maintained boundaries. But Zoe was asleep. Her mother was watching television, and the thought of eating alone in her beautiful prison felt unbearable. So she'd said yes. Dinner became routine. Every night at 8, they'd sit across from each other in the formal dining room and talk about safe things. Books, movies, the weather, carefully neutral topics that felt like code for everything they weren't saying. But on the 7th night, Junho broke pattern. Tell me about Zoe's father. Tiana set down her fork. Why? Because I want to understand you. Understanding me requires knowing about him? Understanding why you're afraid to let anyone close. His gaze was steady. Yes. She could have deflected, could have lied. Instead, she found herself telling the truth. His name was Marcus, not the same Marcus as my brother. Different guy, same poor judgment on my part. She smiled without humor. We met in college. He was charming, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. Then I got pregnant and he became someone else. Someone worse? Someone who thought my body was his property. Oh, who thought fear and love were the same thing? Tiana met Junho's eyes. I grew up watching my father control my mother with his fists. I promised myself I'd never let a man do that to me. So when Marcus grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises, I left. That night, before he could escalate, Junho's expression went very still. Dangerous. Does he know about Zoe? No, and I want to keep it that way. Done. The single word carried weight. If he ever comes near you or her, he won't leave breathing. The casual violence should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like safety. You can't just kill everyone who threatens me, she said softly. Junho's smile was cold. Watch me. That night, lying in her enormous bed with Zoe sleeping in the nursery next door, Tiana admitted something she'd been avoiding. She was falling for him. For the man who read poetry in Korean, who played with her daughter like she was precious, who looked at Tiana like she was the only thing in the room worth seeing. It was the worst possible thing she could do, but her heart didn't care about possible. It only cared about inevitable. The shift happened on a Thursday. Rain hammered the compound's windows, turning the world outside into watercolor smears of gray and green. Tiana was giving Zoe a bath when commotion erupted downstairs. Raised voices, rapid Korean, the sound of multiple vehicles arriving. She wrapped Zoe in a towel and carried her to the nursery. Through the window, she saw Junho emerging from a black SUV. Even from a distance, she could see the blood. Her nurse instincts took over. She put Zoe in her crib with toys, told her mother to stay put, and ran downstairs. The kitchen was chaos. Junho leaned against the marble island, surrounded by his men. His shirt was torn, soaked with rain and blood. His face was pale beneath his tan. Out, Tiana said, her voice cutting through the noise. Everyone looked at her, then at Junho. He nodded and the room emptied in seconds. When they were alone, Tiana approached him carefully. Let me see. It's not as bad as it looks. I'll decide that. Shirt off. He complied, revealing the intricate tattoos that covered his chest and arms. Dragons and tigers and symbols she didn't understand, all rendered in black and gray that made his skin look like a battlefield. The wound was a gash along his ribs, long but not deep, bleeding steadily. Sit, she ordered, already moving to the first aid kit she'd insisted be kept in every room. Junho sat on the counter, and watching her with dark eyes. Tiana cleaned the wound with steady hands, noting the other scars that marked his body. Evidence of a life lived in violence. "What happened?" she asked, threading a needle. "Business disagreement." "You're going to need actual medical care if these disagreements keep happening." "I have you!" The words landed differently than he probably meant them. Tiana focused on the stitches, keeping her hands steady even as her heart raced. This close, she could feel the heat radiating from him, could smell rain and copper and that dark cologne that made her think of dangerous things. "Why did you come to me?" she asked quietly. "You have a doctor on call." "I wanted you." Her hands stilled. "Jun-ho, I know all the reasons this is wrong, but when I'm hurt, when I'm angry, when I'm anything—" He caught her wrist gently, stopping her mid-stitch. "You're who I want." Tiana looked up, meeting his gaze. The air between them felt charged, electric with everything they'd been carefully not saying for 2 weeks. "Tell me I'm alone in this," Jun-ho said, his voice rough. "Tell me you don't feel it too. Lie to me if you have to." She should lie, should step back, should remember all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she whispered, "You're not alone." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Jun-ho's hand slid from her wrist to her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Tiana, don't ask me if I'm sure. Don't give me time to think." She leaned closer, close enough to feel his breath on her lips. "Just—" He kissed her, not gently, not asking permission. Just pulling her between his legs and claiming her mouth with a hunger that stole her breath. Tiana's hands fisted in his hair, the needle falling forgotten to the floor. His hands found her waist, pulled her flush against him despite the wound she'd been stitching. She tasted rain and desperation on his lips, felt the tremor in his fingers, the careful violence he was holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jun-ho pressed his forehead to hers. "Tell me to stop. I can't. Tell me you don't want this. I can't. Then let me have you." His voice was raw. "Just tonight. Let me know what it feels like to hold you without pretending." Every rational thought screamed at her to say no. Every rational thought lost. "Just tonight," she whispered. He lifted her onto the counter beside him, like his mouth finding hers again. Tiana wrapped her legs around his waist, forgetting the wound, forgetting everything except the way he touched her like she was something sacred and profane all at once. They made it to his room somehow. Clothes left a trail neither would remember later. When he laid her on his bed, his eyes asked permission one more time. She pulled him down to her, answering with her body what her mouth couldn't say. Tiana woke to sunlight and regret. Jun-ho's arm was heavy across her waist, his breathing steady against her neck. The intimacy of it made her chest tight. She'd told herself it would be once. One night to get it out of their systems. One night to prove that whatever burned between them was just physical. But lying there, feeling his heartbeat against her spine, she knew it was a lie. This wasn't physical. But this was the dangerous kind of connection that rewrote futures. She slipped from his bed while he slept, dressing in the dim light, her hands shaking. Back in her room, she packed a bag with trembling fingers. This had to stop. She had to leave before she fell any deeper. Her mother appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" "We're leaving. Get Zoe ready." "Naomi, don't argue. We have to go now." Her mother studied her with knowing eyes. "You slept with him." Tiana's silence was answer enough. "And now you're running because you're scared." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." Her mother crossed the room, taking Tiana's shaking hands. "Baby, I know you. You've been running since Marcus, building walls so high no one can climb them. But that man downstairs, he's already inside, and that terrifies you." Tears spilled down Tiana's cheeks. "He's dangerous, Mom. His life is dangerous. I can't..." "Can't what? Let yourself be happy? Let someone protect you instead of always being the one who protects everyone else? It's not that simple. Love never is. I don't love him." Her mother's look said she knew that was a lie. Before Tiana could argue further, the door burst open. Kenji stood there, gun drawn, face grim. "We have a problem." Tiana's blood went cold. "What kind?" "The kind where your brother just sold information about you to the Russians. They know you're here. They know about Zoe. They're coming." The world tilted. "No, Marcus wouldn't." 50,000 wasn't enough to clear his debts. He owed more. They offered him double to tell them where you were. Kenji's expression was granite. He took it. Everything Tiana thought she knew about family shattered. "Where's Jun-ho?" she managed. "Mobilizing everyone. But you need to come with me now, safe room in the basement. You, your mother, Zoe, you'll be protected there." "I want to see him." "No time. They're already on the property." As if to punctuate his words, gunfire erupted outside. Close, too close. Her mother grabbed Zoe from the crib. The baby woke with a startled cry. Kenji herded them toward the hallway, gun raised, his body a shield. They made it to the basement stairs when the explosion hit. The blast threw Tiana into the wall. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the hallway. Through the chaos, she heard Kenji shouting into his radio, heard more gunfire, heard her mother screaming her name. Then hands grabbed her. Not Kenji, someone else, someone rough. Tiana fought, kicking and clawing, but the man was stronger. He dragged her backward toward an emergency exit while she screamed for her daughter, for her mother, for Jun-ho. "Shut up," the man growled in accented English. "You're worth more alive, but I'll break bones if I have to." He shoved her through a door into rain-soaked morning. A van waited, engine running. Tiana tried to run. He caught her hair, yanking her back hard enough to make stars explode across her vision. "Your boss wants you breathing. Didn't say anything about unmarked." He threw her into the van. She hit the metal floor hard, tasting blood. The door slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. Through the thin walls, she heard the battle raging at Jun-ho's compound, heard the sounds of war being fought over her existence. Then the van started moving. And Tiana understood she'd just become leverage in a game she never wanted to play. The van drove for what felt like hours. Every bump sent Tiana sliding across the metal floor. Her head throbbed where it had hit the wall. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back, cutting circulation. She forced herself to think through panic. They wanted her alive. That meant she had value. That meant Jun-ho would come. She just had to survive until he did. The van finally stopped. The door opened, revealing a warehouse, empty except for a chair in the center and 3 men with guns. They dragged her to the chair, tied her down with rope that bit into her skin. One of them, the youngest, looked nervous. "Boss said not to hurt her." "Boss isn't here." The man who'd grabbed her, older, scarred, backhanded Tiana across the face. Pain exploded through her jaw. Blood filled her mouth. She spat at his feet. "Kang Jun-ho will kill you for that. Kang Jun-ho is busy counting his dead. By the time he figures out where you are, you'll be on a boat to Vladivostok." Fear spiked through her, but she kept her expression blank. "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake was yours, sweetheart. Should have stayed a nobody nurse. Now you're worth 3 million to the right buyer." They left her alone then. Just one guard by the door. Tiana tested the ropes, but they were professional, tight. She couldn't move without cutting deeper into her wrists, so she waited, planned, refused to let herself think about Zoe crying for her, or her mother terrified, or Jun-ho possibly bleeding out somewhere. She had to believe he was alive, had to believe he was coming. 2 hours passed, maybe 3. The guard changed twice. Tiana's body ached, her face throbbed, her mouth was dry as sand. Then she heard it. Distant at first, gunfire, screaming, the sound of violence approaching like a storm. The guard's radio crackled. A voice shouted in Russian, panicked, cut off mid-sentence, then silence. The guard raised his gun, backing toward the door. Tiana stayed quiet, watching the warehouse's far entrance where shadows moved with predatory grace. The door exploded inward. The guard managed one shot before he went down, taken out by someone moving too fast to track. Then Jun-ho was there, stepping through smoke with a gun in one hand, knife in the other. His face was a mask of cold fury that made him look like the monster people whispered about. Blood splattered his clothes, not his, she realized, theirs. His eyes found Tiana. Something flickered across his expression, relief and rage warring for dominance. "Close your eyes," he said quietly. She did. The sounds that followed would haunt her. Wet. Final. The kind of violence that didn't ask questions. When Jun-ho said, "It's over," she opened her eyes to find him cutting her ropes, his hands gentle despite the blood coating them. "Zoe?" she asked immediately. "Safe. Your mother, too. They're at a different location under guard." Relief made her dizzy. Jun-ho caught her as she swayed, lifting her like she weighed nothing. "I've got you." "My brother," Jun-ho's voice was flat. "Dead. He won't hurt you again." She should have felt something. Grief. Anger. Instead, she just felt tired. Outside, the warehouse was surrounded by Jun-ho's men. Bodies littered the ground. Tiana looked away, burying her face in Jun-ho's chest. He carried her to a car, settled her in the back seat, climbed in beside her. The moment the door closed, his control shattered. "I thought I lost you." His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't know she was crying. "When Kenji told me you were taken, I'm okay." "You're hurt." He touched her split lip so gently it made her chest ache. "I'll kill them all over again for this." "They're already dead." Not painfully enough. Tiana caught his hands, holding them still. "Jun-ho, look at me. I'm okay, we're okay." He pulled her into his lap, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. His heart hammered against hers, his whole body shaking with adrenaline and fear and relief. "Don't ever run from me again," he said roughly against her hair. I can't lose you. Not now. Not ever." "I wasn't running from you. I was running from what I feel for you." He pulled back, searching her face. "What do you feel?" This was the moment. The choice. She could lie, could protect herself, could walk away, or she could tell the truth and risk everything. "I love you," she whispered. "I tried not to, tried to convince myself it was gratitude or fear or anything else, but I love you, and that terrifies me." Jun-ho's expression cracked open. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because loving you means accepting your world, the violence, the danger, the possibility that any day could be the day you don't come home." "I'll always come home to you. You can't promise that." "Watch me." He kissed her, soft and desperate. "I will burn this entire city down before I let anything take me from you. You're mine, Tiana. Mine to protect. Mine to love, mine to keep safe." "That's not how love works." "It's how my love works." His forehead pressed to hers. "I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to let me be who I am. A killer, yes. A monster sometimes. But yours. Only yours." Tiana closed her eyes, feeling the truth settle into her bones. "What if I can't live with what you do?" "Then I'll find another way. I'll walk away from everything, build something new, be someone new." His voice was fierce. "Whatever you need, Tiana. Whatever it takes to keep you." "You'd give it all up? Your organization, your power?" "For you?" "Yes." The certainty in his voice broke something open inside her. She kissed him, pouring everything she couldn't say into contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, "I don't want you to change. I just want you to come home." "Always," he promised. "Always." 3 months later, Tiana stood in Jun-ho's office, watching him negotiate with men who feared him and felt nothing but pride. He'd changed in small ways since that night in the warehouse, still dangerous, still deadly, but more careful now. He delegated the worst jobs, came home earlier, made time for dinner with her and Zoe every night. The compound had become home. Her mother had her own suite and a garden she tended with obsessive care. Zoe had a nanny she adored and a nursery filled with toys. Tiana herself had gone back to school, finishing her degree online while Junho watched Zoe and made faces that sent their daughter into fits of giggles. Life wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still enemies. Still nights when Junho came home with blood on his hands and shadows in his eyes. But there were also mornings when she woke to find him watching her sleep, his expressions soft in ways he never showed the world. Afternoons when he played with Zoe in the garden, his laughter genuine and unguarded. Evenings when he held Tiana and whispered promises in Korean she was learning to understand. "What are you thinking about?" Junho asked, noticing her in the doorway. "How different my life is now." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "Better or worse?" "Different," she kissed him, "but I wouldn't change it." "Good, because I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Tiana's heart stuttered. "Before you panic," Junho said quickly, "this isn't a proposal, not yet, but it's a promise." He opened the box, revealing a simple platinum band with a single inscription inside in Korean characters. "What does it say?" she asked. "Mine." His voice was soft. "Wear this and let the world know you're protected, that you're loved, that you're mine." Tiana took the ring, slipped it onto her finger, felt the weight of it like an anchor. "I'm yours. And I'm yours." He kissed her softly. "For as long as you'll have me." 6 months after that, they married. Small ceremony, only family present. Tiana wore cream silk that made her skin glow like amber. Zoe was the flower girl, taking her job seriously, dropping petals with intense concentration. Junho cried when he saw Tiana walking toward him and didn't care who witnessed his weakness. The vows they spoke were traditional, but the promises beneath them were not. Tiana vowed to love him despite the darkness. Junho vowed to keep her in the light. A year later, Tiana discovered she was pregnant again. Junho's reaction was everything. He dropped to his knees in the middle of their kitchen, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach, murmuring in Korean. "What are you saying?" she asked, running her fingers through his hair. "That they're already loved, that they'll be protected, that they're the best thing I never knew I needed." Tears blurred her vision. "We're having a baby. We're having everything." He stood, lifting her into his arms. "A family, a future, a life I never thought I deserved." "You deserve this," she said fiercely. "You deserve happiness." "I deserve you," he corrected. "Everything else is just a gift." 9 months later, their son was born. They named him Elijah, meaning "the Lord is my God," a name that felt like redemption. He had Junho's dark eyes and Tiana's smile, and from the moment he entered the world screaming his fury, he was loved beyond measure. In the delivery room, Junho held his son with hands that had killed and hands that trembled. He looked at Tiana with wonder that made him seem young. "How did I get this lucky?" "You knocked on death's door," Tiana said, exhausted and happy. "And I answered. Best mistake I ever made. Being poisoned? No, surviving long enough to meet you." Outside the hospital, the city continued its chaos. Inside, a family built from impossible circumstances proved that sometimes love didn't conquer darkness. It simply learned to exist beside it, to hold its hand through the worst nights, to promise morning would come. In the quiet moments between danger and peace, Tiana would look at her husband, her children, her unlikely life, and understand that some miracles tasted like breast milk and blood, like desperation meeting devotion, like a choice made in darkness that led to light. Junho would catch her looking and smile, that devastating smile that still made her heart race, and she'd smile back, knowing that whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because that's what family meant. Not the absence of darkness, but the presence of someone brave enough to hold your hand through it. They'd been through enough darkness to know their light was real, to know that the dragon who'd almost died in a hospital bed had found his healer, and the nurse who'd saved a monster's life had found her home. In the end, it wasn't the poison that had been the miracle. It was what came after, the choice to stay, the courage to love, the decision to build something beautiful from the ashes of violence. And on quiet evenings when Zoe played in the garden and Elijah nursed at Tiana's breast and Junho watched his family with eyes full of wonder, Tiana would remember that first night. The impossible choice, the intimate rescue, the moment her body became a bridge between death and life. She'd saved the dragon, and in return, he'd given her everything. Not freedom from his world, but freedom within it. Not safety from violence, but strength to face it. Not a life without fear, but a love worth being afraid for. And that, Tiana learned, was the real miracle. Not the biological impossibility that had brought them together, but the emotional impossibility that had made them stay. Love in the darkness. Hope in the shadow. Light born from the intimate collision of two people who should never have met, but couldn't imagine a world where they hadn't. The dragon and his healer. The monster and his miracle. Together, always until the last breath.